Thanks everyone for attending this noon talk to celebrate Philly Archives Month. And I'd like to thank Janet Evans and Susan Glassman for their expertise and patient forbearance as I coerce them into looking at these images time and time again. We'll be looking at the Perla A. Matthews photograph collection housed in the archives at the McLean Library of the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. This collection and others were digitized with funding provided by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, and the images can be found in the State Library's image database. The Perla A. Matthews collection consists of 60 photographs, chiefly documenting Matthews' time as teacher in charge of the Edgar Allan Poe School garden in South Philadelphia. The collection was formed between roughly 1914 and 1919, dates that mark the height of the school garden movement in Philadelphia and its abrupt end. But before we dig into the collection, it might be helpful to present a very brief and broad history of the early formation and development of the school gardens in Philadelphia. In the first decade of the 20th century, urban reformers began to create school gardens for children, particularly those of immigrants and lower income residents. Educators feared urban life would have a negative effect on children. Gardens, they hoped, would be a way to connect youth to nature, teach them responsibility, and improve their physical health. The creation of the first named school gardens in Philadelphia began as a collaboration between the Philadelphia Vacant Lots Cultivation Association and its sister organization, the Philadelphia Civic Club, early in 1901. The Vacant Lots Association was founded in 1897, and its mission was to help the poor secure and cultivate gardens on vacant lots in the city. The Civic Club, founded in 1894, took on activities that included, for example, lobbying for women's representation on the all-male Philadelphia School Board and lobbying for the establishment of factory inspections to support the child labor laws. The School Gardens Committee of the Civic Club, chaired by Elizabeth Leighton Lay, later head of the Pennsylvania School of Horticulture for Women, in collaboration with the Vacant Lots Association, established 5 school gardens. The Church Home for Children, 58th and Baltimore, Waterview Park, Haynes, and Underhill Streets in Germantown, the Prince of Peace Chapel, 22nd and Morris, Lucy Wharton Drexel Garden at 22nd and Locust, and M.W. Baldwin School Garden at 17th and Porter. In 1903, R.F. Powell of the Vacant Lots Association recommended that the collaborative school garden effort be extended and suggested an offer be made to the Board of Education to the effect that we will be at all expense of securing and preparing suitable school gardens on condition that suitable and sufficient teachers and supervisors be supplied by the Board of Education to manage and teach the children and cultivate the gardens. Early in 1904, the Public Education Association rolled out the big guns with a public lecture. The presenters included Fanny Griscom Parsons, founder of the DeWitt Clinton Garden in New York City, and Herbert D. Hemingway of the Hartford School of Horticulture. The addresses aimed to give a clear idea of school gardens and their educational value, and to develop the possibility of opening a garden in Philadelphia. With a special appropriation by the Board of Education of $3,500, The first two Board of Education experimental gardens opened on May 12, 1904. According to the 1906 Municipal School Gardens Report, authored by the Superintendent of School Gardens, Helen C. Bennett, the first of the two gardens was located at 56th Street and Lansdowne Avenue in West Philadelphia, that she describes as a semi-suburban neighborhood of middle-class Americans surrounded by trees and open ground. The Vacant Lots Association provided the land, labor, and preparation of the beds. The Board of Education was responsible for everything else, including the provision of two garden teachers, Marion Sape and Josephine Reed. The school children served by the garden were students attending Heston Public School numbers 1 and 2. And the garden is right here, and Heston 1 and 2 is here. In contrast, the second of the experimental gardens, the Wacaco Garden, on Catherine below 5th Street, she described as a bare lot awaiting improvement as a city square in the heart of a crowded foreign quarter and the only open space for blocks. The garden teachers assigned were Irene Eldridge and Georgie Mendenhall. Bennett followed up with an article published in the April, and here's Wacaco Garden or Square here, and it served Mount Vernon School here. Bennett followed up with an article published in the April 1905 issue of Appleton's magazine titled "The School Garden, A New Method of Nature Study." The garden reported in some detail on the success of both gardens, but Wacaco in particular. Wacaco Garden, however, despite the good press, did not make it into 1905. The city again approved a school gardens appropriation with the proviso excluding gardens at Wacaco Square. The explanation might be buried in this Philadelphia Inquirer report on the Philadelphia budget for 1905, where there's a pretty lurid description of conditions at the city morgue, and where an appropriation of $10,000 is approved for the improvement of Wacaco Square. I can only guess that the 185 school garden plots would prove an inconvenience to city development activities. A substitute for Wacaco was found before the 1905 spring school semester began. A large undeveloped lot was secured across from the Taggart School at 5th and Porter. The Taggart Garden held the place of the largest of the school gardens until 1915, when it lost its privately owned lot to development. By 1915, there were 14 large school gardens, 22 smaller gardens, 18 flower beds in schoolyards, and 24 box gardens in the buildings. And it's reported that there were 38 garden teachers, assistants, and gardeners. The teachers connected with the large gardens worked 6 days a week, assisted by a gardener 3 days a week. Although reports on Philadelphia school garden activity, and here it is. Although reports on Philadelphia school garden activities could be quite granular, for example, a report on the yearly differences of the average amount of harvested beets per garden plot, I failed to find a complete list of school gardens managed by the school system. As I find them, I pin them. The year 1915 is of note because the garden at the newly erected Edgar Allan Poe School succeeded Taggart as the largest garden in Philadelphia. The garden occupied an undeveloped piece of land between the school and the Clark Thomas & Co. furniture factory just below Passyunk Avenue on the Girard Estate. The McLean Library received as a gift a miscellaneous group of photographs, accompanied by a short biography. That Matthews was born in 1879. She lived and worked in the Philadelphia area most of her life, that she worked for the Board of Education for many years, teaching gardening and exercise classes. It continues with a short list that includes her graduation date from Girls High in 1898. In addition, she received certification from the Germantown Medical Unit of the Practical Nurses School in 1944 when she was 65. The narrative ends with, "These pictures are found in her belongings, showing the school, the gardens, and the students." She died in 1978 at the age of 99. The photographs were rehoused in the album you see on the screen. When the library embarked on its PHMC project, the album was one of the first candidates for digitization. We had only a minimal catalog record in our system, and it seemed a good time to provide additional information, and at the very least, an identification of the school depicted in the images. Using this photograph, showing not only the school but the neighboring houses beyond, we began our hunt, matching the image elements to the resources of the Free Library of Philadelphia and those of the online City Archives database. We are fairly certain that the photograph building in the Matthews collection is the Edgar Allan Poe School. This City Archive digital image of the Poe School construction site shows what I believe is the same distinctive row of semi-detached housing as well. We got confirmation from the 1917 General Alumni Catalog for the University of Pennsylvania. Perla Anna Killiam Matthews was teacher in charge of the Poe School Garden. In addition, she was a member of the School Gardens Association of America, the Natural History Society, the Social Workers Club, and the University of Pennsylvania Society of Musical Alumni. She lists the address of the Poe School at 22nd and Rittner Streets, but also what I assume is her residence at 1610 Tioga Street. Her biography makes no mention of her 1901 graduation from Penn. At this point, we can flesh things out a bit. On this map, you can locate the furniture mill, match it to this hexamer description of the Clark Thomas factory, and begin with the first set of photographs, placing at the beginning this image of a soggy bit of waste ground between the school and the factory. This is a major school garden because in addition to the tool house, an arbor is under construction. The land has been prepared and the individual plots laid out. The next two images show the arbor finished and spring work in the garden beds begins. And this mid-season shot of the garden with the crazy but essential castor bean bush with the arbor behind. In addition to its value as an ornamental vertical element in the garden, and although extremely poisonous, the castor bean plant served to hide the garden's ash pile, and it's pictured here in the Carroll School Garden in Port Richmond. Wood ashes were used to sweeten the soil. The school garden arbor is described in most school garden literature as a place to conduct lessons and display examples of student work, both academic and horticultural. In 1916, Carol Miller describes the September 13th, 1915 fall reception day. She enumerates the displays within the arbor and notes, let's see, the classroom work in language and spelling, artistically framed pressed flowers and insect pictures, and canned vegetables produced in 2 of the gardens she visits. But here's where it gets interesting. If you look at the top, there is a display of photographs. And in the detail, I suspect that there are several of the images that we've just seen. Fall Reception Day also included a garden competition with a score of 90%. The Poe School Garden was awarded the prize of a sundial for further ornamentation of their garden, and a very handsome addition to the garden it is. We might be able to document some rule breaking, bare feet while using tools, and a possible case of non-professional work frock worn by an adult. Here are the men of the garden. In this picture, I believe you can spot a 3 sisters planting of corn, beans, and squash. More garden inhabitants, including the ham bones in the corn. And finally, this magnificent image with hollyhocks. Everything proceeds swimmingly. However, there are anomalies. One, for example, is on the first page of the album, this stone building followed by images that don't reflect what we know about the houses bordering the Edgar Allan Poe School. In this free library image of the Stephen Girard School, you can just about make out the bay window before the image is unreadable. And there are 2 buildings on the Girard School lot. The Stephen Girard Consolidated School, built in 1833, and the Stephen Girard School number 2, erected in 1901. This image now makes sense. The stone facing of Girard number 2, the brick of Girard number 1, and the distinctive shutters. The images of both the Poe and the Girard School gardens have this wonderful sense of fun that only comes when the photographer knows her subject. In this series of photographs, the school garden baseball players photobomb the shot. Let me get here we go. Here with a discreet display of a favorite baseball card, and here with a wave of a mitt. Here, these are the members of the team, and a group shot of the Girard School Garden baseball team. In 1917, Girard, Poe, and the largest of the Philadelphia school gardens were pressed into service as war gardens, later named Victory Gardens, with the end of World War I. This is an image of Girard as War Garden number 2. The school garden line item appeared for the last time in the 1919 Superintendent's Annual Report to the Philadelphia School Board. The war was over, and Philadelphia and the rest of the nation were struggling economically. Rather than focus on nature study and school gardens curriculum, the Board of Education turned its attention to introducing newer teaching methods and initiatives. For example, a civics course was introduced to accelerate the Americanization of the influx of immigrants to Philadelphia. The schools recognized the prevalence of malnourishment among the school population and planned to expand its school lunch program. To improve physical health, playgrounds were recommended for every school. Schools needed more teachers, and with attendance sometimes doubling, the school system needed new buildings to ease overcrowding. While the focus of the work on the Perla Matthews images has been to supply information where there was none, if you'll bear with me, a sort of reverse noodling occurs while looking at the published sources, where originally contextualized images through the years are diminished and become as ephemeral and anonymous as the gardens themselves. For example, here is a Lansdowne garden photograph that appeared in the 1906 Bennett report that we viewed earlier. We can place this image as a Lansdowne garden based on the distinctive corner turret right here. The image caption reads, "Garden work attracts girls from 14 to 16 years. The age of the girls is significant. The legal minimum working age for girls and illiterate children was 14. Throughout her report, Bennett argues for the establishment of more gardens. She points to the new labor laws and warns of the dangers of time not spent on wholesome activities. For girls, the time might be given over to, quote, novel reading and hanging around corners with the boys." When we jump ahead to M. Louise Green's monograph, Among School Gardens, published by the Russell Sage Foundation in 1910, the top of the photograph is now cropped and no longer shows the turret that one would use as evidence to moor the image to its proper garden. The caption is changed to Philadelphia Mill Girl Gardeners and is supported with only one line in the main text. A group of Philadelphia Mill girls spend their afternoon hour in the garden. I suppose this is possible. If we look at Lansdowne Garden, which is right here, and we proceed 2 blocks east and move to the nearest factory, the Fairview Woolen Mill, the mill girls might have had time to walk 2 blocks to spend their lunch break at the Lansdowne Garden. The cropped image makes another appearance in Laura Lawson's 2005 monograph, City Bountiful, with the reckless caption, "This 1905 image shows a garden program for girls working in a Philadelphia mill. Although this might be, I've yet to locate a Board of Education curriculum devised specifically for Philadelphia mill girls." Work on the Perla A. Matthews collection under pandemic lockdown has been interesting. Limited to using only available online resources, I've come to appreciate how important physical archive and special collections are to research. In other words, it's not all on the web. For example, a pamphlet titled Philadelphia School Gardens, a Joint Report, held by the Temple Urban Archives, contains what I suspect are the support essays that accompanied the pivotal 1904 public meeting that got the Board of Education School Gardens rolling. And it's not digitized. And there are relevant collections to consult, namely the records of the Civic Club and Vacant Lots Association held by the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, and the school records to examine at the city archives. And I think I'll wrap it up here and ask if there are any questions. Thank you so much.